Assalamu alaikum students. I hope and pray that all of you are fine and safe and sound. Our course title is Comedy of Manners. Our program is BS English. The course code is ENGL3124. My name is Avira Fatma. And let's move towards our presentation. So our topic is importance of being honest. Let's go through synopsis. John Worthing, a carefree young gentleman, is the inventor of a fictitious brother, Earnest, whose wicked ways afford John an excuse to leave his country home from time to time and journey to London, where he stays with his close friend and confidant, Algernon Moncrief. Algernon has a cousin, Gwendolen Fairfax, with whom John is deeply in love. During his London sojourns, John, under the name Earnest, has won Gwendolen's love, for she strongly desires to marry someone with the confidence-inspiring name of Earnest. But when he asks for Gwendolen's hand from the formidable Lady Bracknell, John finds he must reveal he is a foundling who was left in a handbag at Victoria Station. All of this is very disturbing to Lady Bracknell, who insists that he produce at least one parent before she consents to the marriage. Returning to the country home, where he lives with his ward, Cecily Cardew, and her governess, Miss Prism, John finds that Algernon has also arrived under the identity of the non-existent brother, Earnest. Algernon falls madly in love with the beautiful Cecily, who has long been enamored of the mysterious, fascinating brother, Earnest. With the arrival of Lady Bracknell and Gwendolen, chaos erupts. It is discovered that Miss Prism is an absent-minded nurse who 22 years ago misplaced the baby of Lady Bracknell's brother in Victoria Station. Thus John, whose name is indeed Earnest, is Algernon's elder brother, and the play ends with the two couples in a joyous embrace. So here's the character list. There is John Worthing, and there is Algernon Moncrief. John and Algernon are friends and brothers. John proposes to Gwendolen Fairfax, who is the daughter of Lady Augusta Bracknell and cousin of Algernon. John is the guardian of Cecily Cardew, who is going to be proposed by Algernon Moncrief. Miss Prism is the governess of Cecily Cardew, and then there is Reverend Cannon, who is pursuing Miss Prism. So now moving towards the themes of this play. Lies and deceit, marriage, respect and reputation, society and class, gender, versions of reality, romance, love, foolishness and folly. The absence of compassion, duty and respectability, religion, secret lives, passion and morality, preserving the upper class. So, the first theme we are going to discuss is lies and deceit. The most prevalent reason characters in The Importance of Being Earnest lie is to get out of the social or familial duties and to do something more enjoyable. Not surprisingly, few characters hold honesty in the highest regard. However, we see how hard it is for them to set things straight once they have lied about them. As the situation gets increasingly complicated, characters must weave more complex lies to get out of the tangles of their previous lies. Eventually, they reach the point where lies will no longer work and the truth is revealed. Perhaps the most striking thing is that none of the characters ever shows true remorse or guilt about lying. The next theme is marriage. The big question the importance of being earnest raises is whether the marriage is pliable or a restrictive social duty. In general, the older generation thinks of marriage as a means to an end, a way of maintaining or bettering your social position. And every bachelor was judged not on the basis of his virtues, but his family, his rank, and his financial state. But here, in The Importance of Being Earnest, the youngsters think they are interested in love. One of the huge ironies in the play, and what makes it a satire of Victorian society, is that, in the end, nobody really breaks the rules. They color within the lines and marry exactly the type of person the society expects them to. Respect and reputation. In The Importance of Being Earnest, the upper classes care about being respectable, so much so that they do a lot of lying about it. In general, Victorian upper class society holds slightly different expectations of men and women. Men need to be upstanding, rich, and from a good family. Women need to be upstanding, rich, from a good family, and chaste. Any deviation from the rules, being born poor or being found in a handbag in the case of Jack, may prevent a young person from making a good match and continuing his noble line. Society and class. The Importance of Being Earnest reveals the differences between the behavior of the upper class and that of the lower class. Members of the upper class display a great deal of pride and pretense, feeling that they are inherently entitled to their wealth and higher social position. They are so preoccupied with maintaining the status quo that they quickly squash any signs of rebellion. In this play, Wilde satirizes the arrogance and hypocrisy of the aristocracy. The lower classes in Earnest are less pretentious and more humble. but equally good at making jokes. Our next theme is gender. In the importance of being honest, the question of each gender's role in society often centers on power. In the Victorian world of display, men have greater influence than women. Men make the political decisions for their families, while women work around the house quietly, taking care of the children. Men are valued for their intellect and judgment, while women are attractive to men on the basis of their beauty and chastity. However, while raises interesting questions about gender roles and the importance of being honest, by putting women like Lady Bracknell in positions of power, and by showing that men, which in this case are Jack and Algernon, can be irresponsible and bad at decision making. Versions of reality romance. In the importance of being earnest, pampered young women have a skewed sense of reality, inspired by romantic novels. When real life gets too boring, these women decide to take matters into their own hands by recording their fantasies in diaries. Potential lovers enter the picture and provide an opportunity to act out the fantasies. But the women's expectations of courtship often prove too whimsical and idealistic for reality. There is no tragic disillusionment here, though, just marriages and lots of them. Earnest is a comedy after all. Our next theme is love. In the importance of being earnest, it is often hard to distinguish Wilde's notion of romance from that of real love. Readers must settle for a decidedly unmodern definition of love. For example, in Earnest, physical beauty, both female and male, can initiate and sustain a love affair. Forgiveness is an ingredient of love after all. Both women forgive the men for their earlier deceptions when they discover the good intentions behind their crimes. It seems that the definition of love in this play is not so much an unconditional and self sacrificing love, but a general attitude of good intentions, admiration, and honest affection. Foolishness and folly. In the importance of being earnest, the character's foolishness is the core of comedy. Often we don't know whether a character says something contradictory or random in a serious way, or if the character is just joking. This ambiguity in tone makes readers both slightly uncomfortable and prone to laughter. Wilde shows his character's folly in a number of ways, spinning something that is out of human control as if it were a simple matter of mundane choice, inverting aphorisms, so that they mean the opposite of what common sense dictates, and simply juxtaposing random things so that they create an absurd situation. The absence of compassion. Two areas in which the Victorians showed little sympathy or compassion were illness and death. When Lady Bracknell hears that Bunbury died after his doctors told him he could not live, she feels he has, in dying, acted appropriately because he had the correct medical advice. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. Lady Bracknell, like other aristocrats, is too busy worrying about her own life, the advantages of her daughter's marriage, and her nephew's errors in judgment to feel any compassion for others. Gwendolen, learning from her mother, is totally self-absorbed and definite about what she wants. She tells Cicely, "I never travel without my diary. One should have something sensational to read in the train." Wilde seems to be taking the task, a social class that thinks only to itself, showing little compassion or sympathy for the trials of those less fortunate. Duty and respectability. The aristocratic Victorians valued duty and respectability above all else. Earnestness, a determined and serious desire to do the correct thing, was at the top of the code of conduct. Appearance was everything, and style was much more important than substance. The tea ceremony in Act 2 is a hilarious example of Wilde's contention that manners and appearance are everything. The guise of correctness is the framework for war. Both women, thinking they are engaged to the same person, wage a civilized war over the tea sauce. When Gwendolen requests no sugar, Cicely adds 4 lumps of sugar to her cup. Although she asks for bread and butter, Cicely gives Gwendolen a large slice of cake. Her true feelings come out only in an aside that Cicely supposedly cannot hear. Detestable girl. Gwendolen is appalled to find that Cicely is living in Jack's country home. Religion. Religion is also a topic of satire. While concerns of the next world would be an appropriate topic for people of this world, it seems unimportant in the Victorian era. Canon is a symbol of religious thought, and Wilde uses him to show how little the Victorians concerned themselves with the attitudes reflecting religious faith. Chasuble can pre-Christian, marry, bury, and encourage at a moment's notice, with interchangeable sermons filled with meaningless platitudes. Even Lady Bracknell mentions that christenings are a waste of time and especially money. Chasuble's pious exterior is betrayed by his emotions for Miss Prism. While satire here is gentle and humorous, chiding a society for its self-importance. Secret lives. Because Victorian norms were so repressive and suffocating, Wilde recreates episodes in which his characters live secret lives or create false impressions to express who they really are. Jack and Algernon both create personas to be free. These other lives allow them to neglect their duties, in Algernon's case, or to leave their duties and pursue pleasure, in Jack's case. Very early in Act 1, Wilde sets up these secret lives and they follow through until the final act. While Jack and Algernon realize their marriages will end their pursuit of pleasure, they both admit rather earnestly. Marriage means the end of freedom, pleasure, wickedness, and beginning of duty, and doing what is expected. Of course, Jack and Algernon could continue to don their masks after they marry Gwendoline and Cecily, but they will have to be cautious and make sure the society is looking the other way. Passion and morality. Wilde's contention that a whole world exists separate from Victorian manners and appearances is demonstrated in the girlish musings of Cecily. When she hears that Jack's wicked brother Earnest is around, she is intensely desirous of meeting him. She says to Algernon, "I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time." The thought of meeting someone who lives outside the bounds of prudery and rules is exciting to naive Cecily. Even using the name Earnest for his secret life is ironic because Algernon is not being dutiful, earnest in living a secret life. Preserving the upper class. The strict Victorian class system in which members of the same class marry each other propagates the gulf between the upper, middle, and lower classes. Snobbish, aristocratic attitudes further preserve the distance between these groups. The French Revolution is held up as an example of what happens when the lower class is taught to question its betters. Education is not for learning to think. It is for mindlessly following convention. Lady Bracknell approves of ignorance. In fact, she explains the whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. Thinking causes discontent, and discontent leads to social revolution that simply will not do. Now moving towards the importance of being earnest as a comedy of manners. The importance of being earnest is an enlightening example of comedy of manners as it makes fun of the behavior of Victorian aristocracy, which attaches great value to hypocrisy, frivolity, superficiality, artificiality, and money-mindedness. The Victorian upper-class society judged things by appearance only, and the present play makes us laugh at those values by turning them upside down through a language that is satirical, funny, and witty. Different characters in the play embody those values and provide us insight into the upper class society of the Victorian period. The play centers on the questions of identity, love, marriage, and money. Wilde's basic purpose in writing the play was to expose and prove as a sham the norms and values of Victorian aristocracy. That society stressed respectability, seriousness, and decency, but it was very different from what it appeared to be. What needed to qualify for marriage was wealth and a good family background. Lady Bracknell rejected Jack as a candidate for Gwendoline after she knew that she was a foundling. While asking him questions, she gave last priority to his abilities and education, and gave importance to family background. When she came to know that there is a handsome amount of money in Cicely's account, she is ready to get her married to Algernon. The two female characters, Cicely and Gwendoline, love their respective boys just for the beauty of their name, Earnest. They find everything in the name and they love the name. The boys prefer the name Earnest, but they lack seriousness. It is a satire on the society that gives priority to the appearances and surfaces. It is hypocrisy of the concerned people. The dialogue used in the play is funny and witty. The clever exchange between the characters are beautiful on the surface and hollow inside. The artificiality and the paradox embedded in the dialogue well matches the sham and hypocritical values and pretensions of the people targeted by satire. Thus, the importance of being earnest is a comedy of manners, as it uses light-hearted language to evoke laughter at the false values of the Victorian upper society. Now we will discuss the changing status of women and the importance of being earnest. The feminist movement had already been in swing at the time of the importance of being earnest. Women had already moved in the path of education. With a considerable level of education, women had already started heading towards the direction of freedom. This bit of conversation reveals women have also begun to move freely in the occupational world. Wilde pokes gentle fun at this side of the feminist move. Wilde used Miss Prism as a vacant woman who serves as a governess of Cicely and writes novels. Perhaps Wilde too wanted to see the limitations of the feminist movement. The feminists, awake and educated women, had to cling to the mere job of governess. They had to write fictions, except they pursued in jobs of governance. Those feminist women got nothing significant. In the play, Cecily and Gwendolen discuss changing gender roles in their conversation about the male domesticity, indicating they believe that home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man. Marriage, however, remained most women's primary goal. Arranged marriages were common among the Victorian era's upper classes. The status of the 19th century's educated women mostly remained grim. Miss Prism, Cecily's governess, combines two common female occupations, teaching and novel writing, another activity at which women flourished. Prism's confusion between a baby and a manuscript pokes fun at changing ideas about parenthood and child rearing. The misplaced baby symbolized what critics saw as a confusion of gender roles when women entered the traditionally masculine world of the mind. The plight of orphaned baby Jack illustrates the destabilization of the family ties, which in this case are sequentially lost, invented, changed, and discovered. Now we will discuss the importance of being earnest as a satire on the Victorian age. In this play, the importance of being earnest, Wilde satirized the Victorian age. By making a mockery of the Victorian ideals, Wilde threw a satirical spotlight on the Victorian age as a whole. The Victorian society fell in a passionate love with the idea of earnestness. The idea of living in an earnest manner was the topmost ideals of the Victorian society. Earnestness was held as the virtue sublime in the Victorian society. The society was so attached to the fake ideals of earnestness that it was ready to pay any price for it. This frenzied and frantic thirst towards the ideal pressurized individuals to live a double life. People became double dealers in an attempt to live earnestly. The late 19th century British people gradually became hypercritical in their fashionable and faddish struggle to obtain the ideals of the earnestness. This line of rush for the earnest life made people compromise with anything. Ugly, selfishness, unnecessary pride, false sense of self-worth, and dangerous haughtiness developed as evils, which corroded the simple charm and unspoiled nature of the people. The Victorian society was outwardly flowery. It was artificial and hollow within. The upper middle class, haughty and arrogant nature is critiqued by Wilde. Lady Bracknell arrogantly dismisses Jack's proposal to Gwendolen. Her haughty manner makes an appearance when she interrogates Jack whether he is really qualified to be her son-in-law or not. To the utter shame of the readers, she had kept all the biodata and testimonials of those who dared to propose to Gwendolen, but proved unqualified suitors for her daughter. It is really unbecoming of Lady Bracknell to take such a complete control over her daughter's right to choose a suitable life friend. This horrid trend available in the upper middle class people is critically exposed by Wilde in this play. In the play, two characters are shown putting the virtue of earnestness on the pedestal. Jack Worthing and Algernon are those characters who are obsessed with the name earnestness. Jack lives in a country house. He knows it clearly that modern Victorian lady in urban society falls quickly in love with a man named Earnest, but he had a country named Jack. So to arrest the love of an urban lady, Jack took another fictitious name Earnest and went to London. This kind of hypocritical life of Jack is an example of double life. Why Jack took the name Earnest? The answer is an urban lady loves only those whose names are Earnest. Because Victorian society permitted youth to lead a double life, Jack chose that name. The fairish cult of living an earnest life was on the rise in the Victorian society. Therefore, Jack engaged in the cult of bun-bearing. With the name Earnest, Jack went to the town to meet his friend Algernon. He met Gwendolen. Gwendolen knew his name was Earnest. She fell in love with him on the spot. From Gwendolen's behavior, readers come to know how ridiculous the Victorian society had become. What can be more ludicrous than the statement of Gwendolen, who says, "I love you because your name is Earnest." What kind of love it is whose foundation is not devotion on the part of lover, but a mere verbal charm of name? What does the society get from those people who fall in love out of magical charm of name only? Jack and Gwendolen alone are not accountable for the shallowness and artificiality that degrades the society. It is then Victorian society which made room for the youths to run after a depthless and essenceless life. Her mad thirst for love based on the charming name Earnest made Gwendolen's life subsistless. Jack's hypocritical style of living in town by the fictitious name Earnest made him a double dealer. Jack became liar in the process of living an earnest life. He told his ward Cicely that his brother, named Earnest, lives in the town. He falls sick, so he has to visit him in the town. In the same and similar manner, Algernon took a false name Earnest and went to the village to earn the love of Cicely. Algernon had known that Cicely loves Jack's fictitious brother named Earnest, so Algernon went to meet her under the impression that he is Jack's brother named Earnest. Both man and woman became the victims of hypocrisy and the vice of double dealing. These evils persisted in the Victorian society. Particularly the upper middle classes were encumbered by the folly of rushing for the hollow ideals of earnestness. Both Jack and Algernon represent the upper middle class. Their lives were full of vices and follies. Oscar Wilde has attacked the Victorian age for its attachment to loveless life. The love defined by the Victorian society was devoid of love. In the play, Wilde shows Jack and Algernon are being in loveless love with Gwendolen and Cecily, respectively. Even Gwendolen and Cecily love their respective lovers for their noble names only, and not for them. Thank you so much for listening to this. Best of luck for your future.